I think it's very important to have a code of conduct which defines people's behaviour or the standards which the company expects in terms of a lot of it comes down to buying things and selling things. To define the relationship you expect people to have, an arm's length relationship really between the customer and yourself, or the purchaser or yourself. I mean, this can all be embodied in a code of conduct which people should receive when they join the company. Every year there should be some sort of refresher course perhaps conducted in each department. I think it's extremely important, and most large companies have such a document today.
We have a code of ethics, we have a code of conduct. We quite regularly have the ICAC coming in and looking at our processes, because I think it's important to do that. And we take that very seriously. We have also a very high sense, I think, within the organisation, regardless of the formal processes. I think most of the people who come to work in regulators, we don't do it for the money. Most of us do it because we find it challenging, interesting, and rewarding to do it.
There is a general philosophy, and it's ingrained in some core business values, and high standard of ethical behaviour is something that is now put as one of the key components of business values. So pretty much at all levels now there is a fair amount of time and effort spent into, as part of the induction program, joining programs, and fairly regularly reinforced messages. And in practice, mistakes can and are forgiven. Bad ethical behaviour is not. That's punished fairly quickly and severely.
Well, I think again, the head of the corporation will in fact set the standards for the rest of the employees, particularly by setting examples. I think that's very, very important. You cannot expect your colleagues, employees, to behave on some standard that you yourself do not follow. People are very, very smart. You know, if you misbehave and you expect them to behave, it's not going to work. So I think whoever heads up the organization is not necessarily responsible just for the strategic issues, but it's also the internal code of conduct issues. And he or she must set the standard.
The topic of ethics can be a minefield, since different cultures have different ethical imperatives. Across Asia, opponents of corporate governance reforms have argued that they are a form of cultural hegemony, the imposition of Western values where they do not belong. It is true that many corporate governance reforms originated in the West, but that does not mean that they are alien to Asian countries. The value given to honesty in business, for example, is not a Western invention and forms part of many traditional Asian cultures. We asked our guests whether they believe the key underlying values of corporate governance, that is, honesty, fairness, and transparency, can be described as universal ethical values.
Corporate governance values are, I think, basically universal. I think they're universal principles. I mean, what we're talking about is honesty in the way you manage a company, in the way you manage somebody else's money. We're talking about integrity in your dealings with your shareholders, your minority shareholders, your creditors, you know, your employees. We're talking about fair treatment of shareholders and stakeholders. I mean, these are basic principles, I think, that apply whether you're Chinese or American or Greek or European, whatever. I don't think that the principles are fundamentally different. I think many of the standards by necessity have to be global because, again, coming back to the point about the globalization of the world economy and the fact that you now have global companies. I think because you have global companies, you need a certain amount of standardization. Where I do think that there is room for difference, and where certainly I think culture and local practices have an effect, is the implementation of the rules and standards. I mean, clearly that is going to differ from country to country to a certain extent. You know, you do have to take into account in Asia that you've got fundamentally family-run businesses with a dominant shareholder, or you've got state ownership. That's going to fundamentally affect how global best practices are implemented in Asia. But whether Asia is more honest or less honest than other parts of the world, I think the level of honesty here is about the same as anywhere else. I think you're frankly always going to find, I think most people are basically honest, but you know, when you have temptation, when you have a lot of you know, money or power put in front of certain people, they're going to abuse it. And I think that's as true in Asia as it is in the US, Australia or UK.
By that statement, by that question, it would seem to imply that what is theft in Europe may not be equal to theft in Asia. I think that's wrong. If it's something wrong, if it's theft, if you're stealing, right, it should be the same concept wherever you are globally. So in terms of, insofar as governance issues are concerned, insofar as doing the right thing is concerned, I don't think there is and there should be such a thing known as Asian values or global values, what have you. It boils down to a very simple idea, right? Doing the right thing.
I mean, there certainly are different approaches to things, but I actually think that my observation is that there has been a convergence in Hong Kong towards a common set of standards. No, I don't overplay that. I think there are very much there are Asian perceptions, there are different Asian ways of doing things, but the fundamental questions of what is right and wrong in business at the most basic level is similar.
Like in many other things, I think because of the cultural difference, there are Asian values, there are Western values, and that is what I meant by heritage. Say, for example, Asian, especially family-owned business. Now we can talk a whole day about the good things and the bad things about family-owned business. But it tends to be treating the employees much better. So the owner-employees relationship are always an important element of the Asian value. Just to take one example. That is not just in China, it has also happened in Korea, in Japan, for example, which is quite different from US. I believe that each different culture will have its own good points. The important things for all of us in a globalization world is being able to learn all the good things from other people and being able to protect our own value system as well.